All right, so I've mentioned this a couple times now. Celtics are streaking. They are putting a little bit of distance between themselves and the rest of the conference. Right now, the Celtics, first place in the Eastern Conference at 28-7. They're 3.5 games against the Milwaukee Bucks, who are 25-11. They'll play them this upcoming week. That will be a fun one. Milwaukee Bucks, who, by the way, cannot beat the Indiana Pacers, 1-4 against the Indiana Pacers this year. Didn't have that on my bingo card. Don't know how that's a thing, but that's a thing right now. The 76ers are in third place at 23-12, 5 games back. And then you have this massive cluster from 4 to 8 in the East, where it's the Knicks, Heat, Magic, Pacers, and Cavs that are all within a half game of each other. And so it looks like the East is kind of separating themselves as who their top 8 teams are. We'll see. Obviously, anything can happen in the play-in, as we saw. But it looks like right now the East is kind of separating itself with who those top 8 playoff seeds are. And Greg, I think there's been some interesting results starting at the top of the East with the Bucks and the 76ers the last couple days. Let's start with the Bucks. And I think everybody was watching that Wemby-Giannis showdown, which just first and foremost, that was a lot of fun. That was awesome. Watching Wemby and Giannis go back and forth. That Wemby block on Giannis, which ultimately, towards the end of the game, I think was one of the crazier blocks that I've seen in a long time, because I think even Giannis was surprised that Wemby was able to get to it. But when you're 7'5", those arms just come out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I think maybe the bigger piece in relation to the Celtics, you and I watched the Spurs live and in person a few days before that game. Granted, I'll throw it out there, there was no Keldon Johnson for the Spurs the night that we were there, and Keldon Johnson does actually play very well versus the Celtics and has given the Jays, specifically Jaylen Brown, some trouble in the past. So we'll throw that caveat out there, although I don't think it's about a 30 to 40 point caveat. So take it for what you will. But the Spurs looked abysmal. And the Bucks had to scrape and claw and were a Trey Jones 25% 3-point shooter, wide open 3-point shot away from having to go into overtime to take down the Spurs. And I know, Greg, you've already been kind of off on the Bucks as being that much of a threat, but that game, I saw you tweet about it, watching what we watched on New Year's Eve and then seeing the Bucks go up against the Spurs and struggle, you got to feel pretty good as a Celtics fan.
The Bucks just don't look good, man. I know their record is 25-11. Giannis had 48 points last night and they lost to the Rockets. Yeah. Right. Like, I know the Rockets have had a better than expected season this year, but if you're the Bucks and you're coming off of a game in which you barely beat the Spurs, then you got to feel like you're going to bring it a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball. And I saw somebody, I forget who posted it on Twitter, but I think it was a Bucks beat writer or something, asked Giannis about their defense, and he just excoriated them. Like, Giannis just went off on how bad their defense has been, basically saying we can't expect to score 150 points every night and win basketball. Like, we need to make a change. We need to make that change now. And this is my thing with the Bucks. Like, I understand that they have Dame Lillard and Giannis. Dame, every time I watch Dame this year, he doesn't look good. He has like a stretch in the fourth quarter that he plays well, but for the majority of the game, he's a turnstile on defense. His shooting splits aren't great this year. Every time I look at a box score and like in the third quarter, Dame's like 3 for 12 and 1 for 8 from 3.
It's only the fourth quarter. I don't want to put this on Jalen, but how we call Jalen the first quarter opener, right? He always whatever his first. That's Dame Lillard, but only in the fourth quarter.
Right. And that's where you want your guy to step up, right? Is in the fourth quarter. That's why they got him. But I don't think they realized how much they would miss Jrue Holiday. And the fact that Chris Middleton, who used to be a solid wing defender, now can't guard anybody as well. I think their defense just is not set up to succeed. I don't know what the move is for the Bucks. I don't think it's internal. I talked at the beginning of the season how I think Marjon Beauchamp was going to be really important for them. He has been really important for them, but that's still not enough, right? Marjon Beauchamp has played well for the Bucks, but they needed Jay Crowder to be more than he's been. He's also been out every time I tune in. He's never playing.
He's been out for a while.
Yeah, he's been out for a while. They don't have the assets to go ahead and go get an Alex Caruso. I don't know who is available for them. They need a point of attack defender. It's not on the roster. They lost Javon Carter, who is probably like the next best thing. One thing I'm thinking about, maybe, I know he's been playing again for the Kings lately, but Davion Mitchell, like that's one of those like undervalued assets. Maybe they could go ahead and go get as someone that they could throw in, but you can't play him with Dame. So like who's out there that you can go get that is going to make sense defensively for this team? Because Dame Lillard is one of the worst defenders in basketball. He's like, we give Trae Young a ton of shit on this podcast for not being able to guard anybody. Dame Lillard, a little bit more physical than Trae Young, but he's not, I wouldn't say he's like substantially better than Trae Young on the defensive side of the ball. So the Milwaukee Bucks, to me, I never really have considered them too much of a threat to us because I think we've always been a bad matchup for them. Although Giannis can always go crazy, they have no one to guard either Tatum or Brown. So like that's always been their issue. And I'm just not worried about them, man. How you feeling?
I mean, for me, it's the biggest part of this is, and I'm putting a little bit of just in Dame's history, and because he does seem to show up every fourth quarter, despite being, like you said, 2 of 12 or whatever it feels like the first 3 quarters, he seems to go 4 of 6 by the time you get to the fourth quarter. So I'm kind of giving Dame a bit of a pass. For me, it's all about Chris Middleton, right? Like, at least based on what they have, because I just don't know how they improve this externally. So from an internal standpoint, for me, it's all about Chris Middleton, who last night, to your point, played 33 minutes, which rarely do I see him even. I feel like he's still on this like weird, somewhat minutes restriction. Sometimes when I check the box score and I see him play 20 minutes, I'm like, what the hell is this? How long? We're almost 40 games into the season. How long is this guy going to be on a minutes restriction for? Last night, he plays 33 minutes, 3 of 9 from the field, 0 of 5 from 3, has 10 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 turnovers. Like, that's your number 2. I mean, I guess he's your number 3 now with Dame, but you don't have that depth, right? They don't have depth, but they need Chris Middleton to be more than that. Chris Middleton was supposed to be you have Dame to now initiate your end of game offense. You still want to have multiple options. That was Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton was the guy that was initiating their late game offense before Dame Lillard got there. And I don't know what Chris Middleton is anymore. I really don't. He's certainly not on a star level right now and hasn't been with these injuries over the last year or so. So with Chris Middleton, the way he is, like, it's hard to get too worried really about the Bucks. Yeah. And we've always talked about him being a Celtics killer, but that's going to have to be something that's proven over time. And so the Bucks are in a really tough spot, which, like you said, it's hard to say that, or, when they are in second place and they're 25-11, but when you watch them, it doesn't look good. And then I think you go to Philadelphia, right? So Philadelphia is 23-12. When they're fully healthy, and Embiid is still in and out of the lineup. Like, I mean, Embiid's having a crazy season, but he may not even hit the 65 game plateau to be able to be eligible for all of the awards that would rightfully probably go to him. They're 23-12. They also lost to the Jazz last night after the Celtics beat them down.
No Embiid.
No Embiid in that game. But once again, he's just in and out of the lineup. It still feels like all the time. And Philadelphia does look better when they're whole. But something that I think is really important to, at least right now, for the evidence that we do have, looking at strength of schedule, Celtics have played the 6th toughest schedule in the NBA. Here's the bottom 6 teams for strength of schedule. At number 25, the Miami Heat. At number 26, the Philadelphia 76ers. 27, Washington Wizards. 28, Portland Trailblazers. 29, Phoenix Suns. And dead last with the easiest strength of schedule is the Milwaukee Bucks. So when you look at the teams that Boston is playing early on and the way that they're putting some separation between themselves, and their easy part of their schedule is just coming up now as we get to the second half of the season, this first half, 3 of their biggest worries in their conference have been 3 of the top 6 weakest schedules. Now, Miami, I think throw it out because they rest Jimmy, Bam all the time. We know, like, I just put that in there because they're right in that mix. But for Philadelphia and Milwaukee, that's got to be a little bit concerning that they have this easy of a strength of schedule, and yet they're 5 and 3.5 games behind the Celtics, who now have a much easier path coming up here in the second half of the season.
Yeah, with the Sixers, I think the issue with them is when things get difficult, especially for Embiid, and you've seen this in the playoffs year after year. He's not as effective when teams like really hone in on his tendencies, avoid fouling him and just make him kind of get it out the mud. Like Embiid doesn't really like doing that. So with the Sixers, that's what you got to be concerned about because they were killing the rat teams, as Chris Vernon likes to call them. They were killing the rat teams early in the season. That's where they built up that insane point differential. That's when Embiid was going for like 45 points a night against playing the Wizards every other fucking night. So I think with the Sixers, when you see them go up against the Knicks, who I think we should talk about here in a second, and the Knicks just completely destroyed them. Hartenstein, who's been balling for them, he had like 18 rebounds last night. Hartenstein just gave Embiid problems all night. They beat them with Julius Randle not even scoring double digits in that game, right? The Knicks defense really gave the Sixers some problems, and in the playoffs, you're going to have better defensive efforts game to game because you're honing in on tendencies and you have actual game plans to stop people. And I think Embiid, when he goes up against a defense that's ready to take away some of the stuff that he loves to do, he's just not quite as effective. He can put up these crazy numbers in the regular season, but he's just not as good in the playoffs. Not to mean he's bad in the playoffs, but he's not as good. And they need him if they want to win a championship, if they want to get through the Boston Celtics, they need Embiid to play like an MVP. And he's never played like an MVP against the Celtics, and he's never played like an MVP in the playoffs. So although the Sixers, I think their roster this year is a lot is like more designed to match up well, more balanced, match up well with the Celtics in the playoffs. That's still what you got to worry about is can Embiid do it in the playoffs, and can Maxey prove that he's a number 2 guy on a championship team. We see that Maxey's really, really good. He's been a problem for everybody this year, but we also have the defenders to give him some issues. So the Knicks are the team. If I'm looking in the East, right?
4 straight one for the Knicks, by the way. A lot of that coinciding, obviously, with the OG Anunoby trade.
Exactly. And, we were texting with our guy, Matt Liptak, who is a huge Knicks fan. And to me, the upgrade the Knicks still need to make is Julius Randle. I know Randle went crazy last night. He had like 38 points in the game last night. But I just don't think he's necessarily the guy in a playoff series to be your number 2. Jalen Brunson, is he a number 1? I feel like Brunson's probably a number 2,
part of the issue,
right? Brunson's probably a number 2. Randall's probably a number 3. So they're kind of like leveled up there. But they, with Tibbs and the defense that they have, they can give anybody an issue. They've played the Celtics really, really tough over the years. And I think Hartenstein's a better matchup to go up against Porzingis than Mitchell Robinson. So I actually think they might be okay going up against us. I still think the deal out there, and we were talking about this with Liptak, I think Randall for like a Jeremy Grant type who can guard Tatum, like maybe that's a better fit, but that's not enough offense, right?
Yeah, that's every deal we talked about in that thread. That's what I would come back to is you're making that trade, and it doesn't to me, none of the trades that are potentially out there, and the Randall trade, like I it's weird because I agree with you that I don't think Randall's the guy or the right guy, but I don't think any of the trades that are out there are going to take them from where they are and put them into that Boston, Milwaukee, Philadelphia tier. Like I don't think there is a move out there that would do it. The only move that we alluded to in our chat was we threw the name Zion out there, but also I don't think but then the other flip side is a lot of these teams are going to look at Randall and be like, what the hell are we going to do with Randall? Right. Mm-hmm. And so,
that's where it has to be a 3-team deal.
Yeah, exactly. So there's got to be, it's a weird spot for the Knicks. And so I do think for them, I would assume they're probably just going to have to hold, and maybe they'll add, we've seen, I guess there's some Malcolm Brogdon rumors out there as well. Add that in, and that just makes them a tougher out. I don't think Malcolm Brogdon's going to put them over the top, but it certainly makes them, a tougher out. And the Knicks are not going to be a fun team to play in the playoffs, right? That's going to be a team that you're like, shit, man, this is probably going 6 or 7, and it's going to get us real bruised up. And this was leading me to one of the last points that I wanted to make here as we're playing the Pacers again on Monday night, is that I look at what is kind of separating itself as the top 8 in the Eastern Conference. And I am praying to God that at some point in that first or second round, the Celtics get the Pacers, because they're the only team that I feel like you're going to be able to come out of a series. And even if it goes 6, you're not going to be as broken down, right? Because we talked about they don't have the defenders.
They do have Aaron Nesmith.
They have Aaron Nesmith, right? So you may get poked in the eye a couple
You know
times.
what's funny, dude? with Nesmith, like I love Nesmith on the Celtics. I loved his hustle, and I've been like rooting for him to do well in the Pacers. But like seeing him this year, now I'm starting to hate him. I'm like, God damn it, Nesmith! Like, fuck you.
He's becoming that guy, right? It's becoming like a Pat Bev type, right? Where when he's on your team, you love you know how you've seen this guy hustle, you've seen what he does here, but now you're up 15 or 20 and he picks up Tatum at half court and he's just hacking the shit out of him. And you're like, get away from Tatum.
Over under 2.5 serious leg injuries Aaron Nesmith causes in his career.
Oh,
serious meaning you have to get surgery.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take the under, but I think it's probably right at 2. like I think it's I think it's going to happen for sure. 2.5 is just that. I mean, yeah, I'll take the under, but not by much.
Okay.
But yeah, he plays. I mean, this is like you said, this is one of the things that we liked in the little bit in the glimpses that we got, and we were never going to get the full Aaron Nesmith experience because there just wasn't room for his development within the Celtics timeline and what they were doing. But other than him, it's just the Pacers are going to be, from a physicality standpoint, if you look at the 8 teams that are projected to be in the playoffs, that's the team. If I'm the Celtics, I'm like, please give me them in the first or second round to likely, aside from Aaron Nesmith, preserve the health of my team, the wear and tear. Because when you go up against Milwaukee, of course, you got to deal with Giannis and in Brook and all that. And that's going to be, that's going to be a bitch. Trying to fight around screens on Dame. 76ers, Pat Bev, Embiid, the whole list. We know the deal. The Knicks, we just talked about. The Heat, we certainly fucking know about them. The Magic, we know that they're making their ends on defense right now because they're not a great offensive team. And they're big, they're long, they're tough. Cleveland, once they get healthy again, you got Allen, you got Mobley, you got to deal with. So, I think Pacers, for me, as we look at what projects to potentially be before any moves are made, the 8 teams in, that if we can, unless of course the Pacers just get the Bucks and they take care of the Bucks, let's go with that. That's the best case scenario. 7-2. Let's go ahead and get the Bucks out of here with the Pacers. But if I'm the Celtics, the Pacers feel like, despite their high-powered offense, that's the team that I would really hope that we get just to give ourselves a physical break in a playoff run.
Absolutely, man. And the thing about the Eastern Conference, people have always talked about the West being the tougher conference, but the East is playing like kind of old school Eastern Conference basketball, like gritty, physical, late 90s type of basketball.
I mean, the Knicks, Heat, and Magic are all that. That's
exactly
what all 3 of those teams are.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how the league is kind of going in another cycle, trending big, trending physical, in an era in which defense is kind of undervalued and there's so much emphasis put on the offensive side of the ball. In the playoffs, it's still going to come down to defense. It's going to come down to physicality, and then can you make shots when it matters? And I think in the East, the Pacers are definitely the team that don't present as many issues on the defensive side of the ball with the physicality, aside from one Aaron Nesmith.
Yeah, he's going to be the one that you watch out for, but we'll have to see here. Celtics, busy week coming up here, man. We got some tough games here. Obviously, Monday we're talking about the Pacers in that home and home baseball style series. And then later this week, man, they've got the T-Wolves and Bucks on a back-to-back, and then Ime makes his return on the weekend. So a really fun schedule for the Celtics coming up, and a really difficult schedule. As we said, Rockets just beat the Bucks. So we got a lot to look forward to this upcoming week. Greg, this has been a fun one. As always, we'll be back later in the week to get you set up for some of those matchups. Any final thoughts? And then for those listening here to the audio feed, let them know what they're going to hear on the way out.
Just make sure you're subscribing to our Discord channel, our YouTube channel. Links are in the description of the show. If you go to our Twitter @GreenEnvyPod, you'll see the link to our Discord. We'll probably do a mailbag here soon. Continuing to try and put out some good content for you on YouTube. We had Steve Jones of the Dunker Spot with Nikias Duncan, who's on the JJ Redick podcast for the 3 Things. We had him on the pod recently. So make sure you go ahead and listen to that interview or watch that interview on YouTube. And you're going to hear music from my band down here in Austin, Texas. We are called Black Sheep Optimists. This one is called Get This High. Peace, everybody.
Peace.